Welcome to your Daily Detroit for Monday, November 2nd, 2020. I'm Jer Stays. On today's show, what to know around town, plus Fletcher Sharpe on sports over the weekend. Let's get started after a quick moment to say thanks to our members who make this possible. We have memberships and swag for individuals and, by popular demand, some opportunities for businesses to get involved affordably. It's a different way to fund media, but it keeps us fiercely independent and focused on what matters, and that is our community. So join us at dailydetroit.com/support, and let's get started. The coronavirus rages in Metro Detroit as Oakland and Macomb County now have enough cases per capita that in the past it would warrant stay-at-home orders. And Wayne County is hot on their heels in a bad way, with their numbers lowered somewhat by the city of Detroit. But I gotta say, those numbers are rising too. Statewide, Michigan had more than 6,700 confirmed COVID-19 cases Sunday and Monday, along with nearly 3,800 cases Saturday. 48 more people lost their lives. That brings the pandemic totals to nearly 185,000 cases and 7,357 deaths. The Oakland County Health Department's school guidance is now at a level where they recommend in-person learning stop due to the high number of cases per capita and the positive test rate being north of 20%. Some districts are heeding the warning and some are not. This is as the pandemic is raging across the country at more than 100,000 cases per day, and Michigan is in the top 10 of states for viral transmission. Sources for this report include the state of Michigan, Brown University's Global Epidemics Project, COVID Act Now, and RT.live. In what I'll call the OMG WTF Kwame saga, rumors have been circulating for years that former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick would get released from prison early. He served 7 of his 28-year sentence on 24 federal felony counts of mail fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering. The latest that started Sunday is an echo of the spring, that he would receive compassionate release due to COVID-19 concerns. The source of the information, first being reported by Fox 2 in a story that was later taken down, was Michigan State Representative Karen Whitsitt. Whitsitt became a Trump ally after saying hydroxychloroquine helped heal her of COVID-19, and she is also the same source in the spring of the rumor that proved not to be true. A number of Trump allies, including a candidate in Georgia, tweeted support for Kilpatrick. Then, Kilpatrick's sister, Ayanna, tweeted out late Sunday night that, quote, due to suffering severe health challenges, we expect Kwame Kilpatrick to receive a grant for COVID-19 compassionate release from the FBOP this week, unquote. And that would be the Federal Bureau of Prisons. This all set off a firestorm of speculation that it would be done just before the election to support President Donald Trump, speculation which the deleted Fox 2 report did not help. Multiple media outlets have reported since that there has been no change to Kwame Kilpatrick's release on the Bureau of Prisons website, and that's of this recording late Monday afternoon. So who knows? I guess it's plausible, but Kilpatrick release rumors have taken on the mythos of finding Jimmy Hoffa's body around here, and I'll believe it when I see it. Election day is Tuesday, so here are a couple interesting things around that. On Monday, the Joe Biden campaign revealed a new commercial with a soundtrack by Detroit superstar Eminem. The track, Lose Yourself, was the same used by Chrysler back in 2011 for their landmark commercial featuring Detroit. It's the first time Eminem has licensed his work for a political campaign. The New York Times says that Oakland and Macomb counties are 2 of the 20 battleground counties in the nation. They note statistically that Macomb County, which is mostly white and older, has picked the statewide winner in the last 7 elections for governor and president. However, neighboring Oakland County, the most affluent in the state, has become a more solid shade of blue as its demographics change. It's becoming younger and denser on the rise and urbanization of the Woodward Corridor. Statewide, the latest polling average puts Joe Biden up by 8 points over Republican President Donald Trump. That is a far stronger position this late in the game than Hillary Clinton had in 2016. On Wednesday, we'll have a local post-election breakdown episode with Steve Freese of Newsweek and Hour magazine. Now, by that time, we might not know everything, but we'll know something, or not, and you'll just get audio of us crying in a corner. We'll see. The sprawling UAW GM training center on the Detroit riverfront has sold for an undisclosed price. The property spans 18 acres on the city's east side and has 420,000 square feet of built space. The report by the Detroit Free Press says that Auburn Hills-based Mosseri Companies and Detroit-based 400 Monroe Associates are the buyers. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but for context, it cost $180 million to construct it about 2 decades ago. The old Art Van headquarters on 14 Mile between Mound and Van Dyke in Warren is now the home of the corporate offices of Love's Furniture and Mattresses. Built with fresh dollars and out of parts of the fallen Metro Detroit icon, Love's will hire 500 people at their HQ that will also serve as their distribution center. And the numbers here are kind of crazy. There is 5.7 million square feet of storage space there, with 1 million square feet of offices. They expect to have $150 million in business flow through this property. One thing that they mention in the press materials is, quote, clear and easy pricing. One of the things that was annoying and outdated about Art Van was their absurd sales. The sale price was always what they actually wanted to charge, and the sale percentages just changed, and all of us kind of figured it out in the internet age, and then we just kind of thought it was lame. So I'm glad they're doing something different. Hopefully this works out better because there's a lot of jobs attached to it, and, you know, we always kind of pull for hometown teams. As he does every Monday, Fletcher Sharpe is with us to unpack that wide world of sports over the weekend. Fletcher, welcome back to Daily Detroit, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Of course. Now, first up, it is the, frankly, to a lot of people, stunner of Michigan State beating nationally ranked University of Michigan 27-24. It was one of those games people did not expect to be really even close, and then for State to pull it off, I mean, that just kind of shook social media on Saturday.
When you lose to a team that had not won a Big Ten game in almost 2 years, 2.5 years, as Michigan State did to Rutgers, it kind of casts a big dark cloud over the rest of your season, especially when you're playing against your rival who's ranked 13th in the country. You expect some bad things to happen to you. So for Michigan State and Coach Mel Tucker to pull it out is amazing. Again, I picked Michigan just based off the fact that, like, it did not look very good for them. But you got to remember, rivalry games, passions happen. Games get a lot tighter because people actually care. Even if there were no fans in the stadium, like, the players care very much so. Michigan State rode Ricky White, freshman from the South, to had a career game. I think it posted 189 yards receiving, which is great. Yeah, honestly, if I'm a Michigan fan, I don't know if I want Harbaugh to be on my team anymore. I mean, a lot of people were very concerned about him coming into the season, but against Michigan State and Ohio State at home, he's like 1-7, which is not going to get it done. That's not.
Well, rivalry is just so important in college sports, and especially at a school like Michigan, you're going to pay if you don't, from the supporters and donors, if you don't beat your rivals.
Yeah, you can lose every game of the season. Like, for the first few seasons, obviously they want you to win more games, but you can lose every game for a season. But if you beat the rivals, they'll find ways to keep you around. They won't like it, but they'll understand it. But, like, if you're a decent, moderate coach, as Harbaugh's shown to be with Michigan, and you lose to your rivals, people don't want you because, like, that's the game that they want to lord it over people. And yes, no matter how old they are, whether they're like 5 years old or like CEOs of big companies, like, they want to lord it over their friends. Like, we beat you this weekend. Like, that's the one time they revert back to being children. So to have that thing, especially often as a Michigan fan, it's got to be irritating. I know a friend of mine who's a Michigan State fan. It was so improbable. He was thinking about making a $25 bet on one of the online betting things for Michigan State. Was like, nah, I didn't do it. And it ends up, had he made the bet for $25, he would have won almost $900. So he's like, yeah, I really wish I had just said, you know what, maybe just take a chance.
Then what would be next? Like, is there any idea who you could replace him with?
Not really. I know a lot of people have some speculations who they want to coach. I see you should let him finish the season, because firing him now and just throwing someone in there is not going to do anything. It's going to make your season worse. It's almost disrespectful to the kids there because they were signed by him. They should at least get to finish it out with him. But yeah, I don't know who's going to fix this mess. They keep trying to bring in these like bigger names. They had Brady Hoke, Rich Rodriguez, Jim Harbaugh, and just each time they bring in a bigger and bigger name, like, it hits a point where they just can't really get better and they plateau for different reasons, whether it's they have a great season all around or whether it's they win games that don't beat their rivals, or whether it's like they get the big recruits but just don't pan out. You need to bring someone in who's like very, very ready for the pressure, because it's going to be a very pressure-packed situation. If you don't immediately produce, even with someone else's kids, they want your head on a platter.
Well, looking ahead to next week, they're up against 13th ranked Indiana. Any thoughts on that one?
Indiana beat Rutgers this last week, so I don't know if Joe Milton, the quarterback from Michigan, can get his erraticness under control. He could be a star in college football. If he can do that against Indiana, who have a solid defense, then they'll be fine. But if not, then, I don't know. Also, it's really weird to see Indiana ranked 13th nationally in football. Like, they're not a football school by any means. So to see them ranked this high is like, my eyes kind of pop out.
And then Michigan State's against Iowa.
That's a game Michigan State always has to grind out. I don't know what it is. Like, Iowa can be 0-100, and Michigan State can be 100-0. And like, for some reason, that game always ends up being a grinded out type of game. Their team's very much built on the foundation of, we're going to get in your face, we're going to make you play for the entire game. So that game could go either way. I'm not really sure. I think Michigan State might sneak by based off of how they feel from this last week, though.
When flipping to the pros then, the Detroit Lions broke hearts yet again because, you win a couple and then you, of course, lose here. It's just the way that we do it in Honolulu Blue Country. They've dropped to 3-4. The Colts just beat them insufferably, 41-21. And it doesn't look like you're getting that tattoo for the playoffs, Fletch.
Yeah, which I'm a little bit relieved, honestly. I have nowhere in my body where it would actually fit perfectly, but like, if I had to get it, I have to get it because I'm a man of my word. Yeah, I kind of expected this. The Lions held close for a minute, and then because the Colts are run by a very good quarterback in Phillip Rivers, there was like a 5 or 6 minute span where the Colts just kind of kicked it up a notch and the Lions were unable to like get by there. Whether it was offensive or defensive, they couldn't stop the pass. They couldn't stop the little key runs. And when they were trying to get back into it, Matt Stafford made a horrible pick six. That just kind of sealed the game at that point. And honestly, if I was not watching it for reporters' sake, I would have turned the game off.
I mean, I find it hard to watch the Lions lately, and that defense was just a pain. I mean, the numbers came out, 11 different Colts got their hands on the ball. That Lions defense is just a mess.
That falls less on the defense to a degree and more on the fact that they're facing a really great, potentially Hall of Fame quarterback in Phillip Rivers, who has a very quick release, even though it's very herky-jerky and odd to look at. So, like, you kind of expected that a lot of people would get the ball passed around, but you didn't expect to look and see one of your top corners in Tracy Walker getting burned over and over again by a running back down the sideline. It's typically something you never want to see out of your number one cornerback, so that's a very big problem, and I don't know how they're going to address because, it's the middle of the season now. The Lions have the second longest streak in the NFL snap for quarters in a row scored. They had 11 quarters going into halftime, and Matt Prater hit a very awful shanked field. I don't know what happened. There was no pressure. He had all the time from his favorite hash, and he just shanked it left. The ball spun like sideways. So like something happened somewhere. He wasn't looking at this long snapper or the holder. So I guess he just must have shanked it horribly. That's not good. I expected it because the Lions seem not to really play their greatest against teams that are over 500.
Well, I mean, I think that just comes down to the fact that they're just a terrible team. I mean, they play good teams, they lose.
Even in the Jim Caldwell like scheme, like they would make the playoffs, but like they would make the playoffs after beating every under 500 team and like maybe one or two over 500 teams, which is what you need to do to make the playoffs. You need to beat all your easy games and like grind out your harder games. But like it didn't really fill us with much hope that they were going to do well in the playoffs, but we were just happy to be in the playoffs. That might be how this season turns out potentially. They might beat the rest of their cupcakes, maybe win one more game against a competitive team, but like I don't know.
I thought about this the other day. It's that we haven't had a playoff win in 29 years. I was a kid back then, and I know we have a bunch of listeners who like they've never seen a Lions playoff win in their lifetime, and it's just kind of stunning. And yet we have so many people in this town who just stand for this team that, I mean, sure, be fans, and I'm all for that, but at some point, like, when are we going to demand like any kind of respect from our ownership that we deserve a good team?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to hold those people accountable because you want to still have your product be the way it is. And sometimes when you hold people accountable, they go the opposite direction and change everything. And I know people really hate change. So I understand why some people are very apprehensive to be like, I don't know if I want to, get on the Fords like this to make some changes, but like maybe make a few. Because if you say to make a few, sometimes they make all of them.
Well, next week, the Vikings.
Oh, that's a loss.
I guess I'll leave it there. Switching over to Zimbabwe. The reason why we mentioned Zimbabwe is that there is a cool local angle to an international soccer story that you've got, Fletch.
Earlier on in an earlier episode, we mentioned that Tendai Jadira for Detroit City FC and Tatenda Makruva of Michigan Stars FC were called up to the Zimbabwe national team to play in a friendly against Malawi. Unfortunately, because Zimbabwe's international federation is kind of a mess, Tendai was unable to get to Zimbabwe and get his passport and everything registered fine, and Tatenda was unable to leave Michigan at the time, which probably for the better because we were in the middle of going to another spike, so we probably didn't want them to leave and get other people sick. But coming up is the Africa Cup of Nations qualifier, the AFCON qualifier, to see who goes to the World Cup from Africa's teams, and they both have been recalled. Tatenda, if he were to get on the field and play, would be his 21st appearance. Tendai would be his first if he happens to get on the field. So just to have that alone is great for Tendai. It's awesome that he's able to get called up like this because I'm super certain he probably wasn't on the radar for them as much, which shows that he played super hard and super well to get on there, and I'm really happy for him. Tatenda, I'm happy for him as well because he played in the AFCON a few years back against some really great teams, Senegal, Algeria, but he played really well, and then once he left Zimbabwe to go play in South Africa, and then once he left South Africa to play somewhere else, they kind of forgot about him. So when he got to the U.S. and played really well, it kind of put him back on the radar. Unfortunately for them, they have a tough game against Algeria, who is currently ranked 30th in the world. Zimbabwe is 111th, so it will be a very tough task, but honestly, their team's up for it. They have some players who play in the Premier League. There's some players who play in the top league of France and Spain. So yeah, they can throw around with anybody, and the AFCON's one of my favorite tournaments because it's very, very wacky, where you don't know who's going to win. You could have the number 10 ranked team in the world play against a number 150th, and somehow the 150th team will come out and win 4-0, and you just don't have an explanation for it, except for the fact that it's AFCON. So it's really brilliant. It's really fun. The players there really have personality, and like you get to see it shine through.
Well, it's kind of cool to have some local fan favorites to cheer in this offseason.
Yeah, especially with the bigger implications. If Zimbabwe finds a way to qualify for AFCON and qualify for the World Cup, we'll have local players potentially playing in the World Cup.
That is super cool. That is just a really neat connection. Well, Fletcher Sharpe, thank you so much for updating us on everything as you do. If you've got, thoughts, shout them out at Saint FDW on Twitter. That's where you'll find Fletch. Thanks, man.
Yep, thank you.
And that is all for today. If you haven't voted yet, be safe and smart voting tomorrow. Look, I'm not going to go on a big endorsement thing. If you want to know who I voted for, email me at jer@dailydetroit.com, and I'll share a link with you to who and as to why. You can also leave feedback for the show there at the same email address. We've also got our voicemail line at 313-789-3211. Also, thanks to our members at dailydetroit.com/support, our Patreon members, the contributors, all that stuff. And of course, thanks to you for listening. I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together. Talk tomorrow.